Hello and most welcome to 1961 of the series. We will continue today 1959, Wittgenstein's Cognitivism is a lot to chew, explained and vindicated by Eugen Fischer. I think I'll need some help today with my colleague Lundov to keep the Geist strong. Many laughs now, because now it's pretty dark here in Gothenburg. There's no hint of sun, and it doesn't get any darker. Well, it will in a week or two, but as much good humor as we can put into it, I'm more than happy. Last time we went into the two schemas, and the last one is rather newish one, and it has connection with the present. So we are aching to do irrational, unthinking, thinking things, so to speak. So we leap to certain thoughts inadvertently, without really being aware of it. They just happen. Wittgenstein is trying to dig under the surface of these idiosyncratic thoughts. They do not share. They do not enter into the outside, as using a term we spoke about in Derrida from Manosaki's lecture 1960. Schema 1 is that we assume an inner conscious or unconscious process that goes on when we do something, when an action is instigated or in its way. Schema P is that we think that is something going on in the present. I think present is a key word here. We put a tangent on that earlier on. Didn't get it into deep, but there is something in the logocentric now, actually, I would say, the metaphysical presence. So the past, as we mentioned, the past and the future are the criterions, as mentioned by Johnston and especially Francis Ling, Ling. Real and apparent being have to be distinguished by reference to something that happens in the given or present situation of being. And if nothing external, then an inner process. So we sort of get stuck in the either or. The either or. The either or. And I'll continue where we left off, if you can take us there, Kalle. maybe a bit smaller, 230 maybe, something like that. That'd be perfect. Elsewhere, I try to get clear not merely on the nature, but also the source of such urges to misunderstand, misunderstand. And explain how the most fundamental of them may arise from what Wittgenstein called philosophical pictures. Philosophical pictures, pictures.
Features.
Thank you, Kalle. Pictures, philosophical pictures. For our present purpose of making sense of Wittgenstein's therapeutic aims and non-theoretical methods, however, we do not have to address this very large issue, except briefly in section 8 below. All that matters for this purpose are the facts that in philosophical reflection we are frequently driven by such urges, and that this has us imagine problems where there are none. 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 Let's now consider how Wittgenstein establishes these two facts. In the present case, the mentalist urge has us populate our inner life with imaginary conscious events and inner processes. Inner processes. Inner processes. All and the conflict of such illusions with reality or among themselves may create the unwarranted impression of a problem. Of a problem. Here it starts from then on. Two, imaginary experiences. In his investigation of reading, PI 156 to 78, Wittgenstein examines how that common urge has a philosopher imagine experiences where there are none. None, none. Nunnery. With nothing. This philosopher is none other than Wittgenstein himself. He is his own guinea pig, as he works. Yes? Guinea pig. As he works here from the first person perspective, he explicitly advocates. The philosopher is someone who has to cure in himself many diseases of the understanding. Understanding! One of the diseases of the understanding Wittgenstein finds in himself is the urge to misunderstand. Accordingly, he uses, rather than quotes, the words, I should like to say. In introducing the different versions of the idea to which the mentalist urge has us leap. He would like to say, in the cautious sense presently, explained. That when reading or copying, etc., we are having characteristic experiences that distinguish actual from merely apparent exercises of these activities, and frequently expresses this idea with idiosyncratic formulations that cannot credibly be put into anyone else's mouth. For instance, I should like to say, I experience because the I experience the because. It's an originary, the first start, the true start, the big bag. Wittgenstein's attitude towards these ideas differs radically, though, from that of other philosophers in the grip of the mentalist urge of the mentalist urge. He is aware of his predicament and therefore careful not to endorse the idea that strike him as compelling. He would like to say and believe these things merely in the sense that it comes naturally to him to say them. For he regards this inclination as just that, as just that, as an inclination or temptation to use a particular kind of expression. Indeed, as a temptation to talk nonsense. To talk nonsense in the colloquial sense that covers both meaninglessness and absurdity. Absurdity!
Absurdity.
Welcome, Kalle. All the same, he attends to it very carefully. Very carefully. Very carefully. He attends to it very carefully, in line with his exhortation. Do not do it for heaven's sake. Be afraid of talking nonsense, of talking nonsense, of talking nonsense. Only do not fail to pay attention to your nonsense. To your nonsense. He pays attention even to patently nonsensical conclusions that strike him as tempting in order to identify urges to misunderstand that in different settings may have him actually go along with absurd ideas he sees through less easily, as we shall see in the next section. In the investigation of reading, Wittgenstein makes himself aware that he has 1. a context-sensitive propensity to be attracted by specific ideas about reading, copying, etc., for which too there really is no warrant by making a series of experiments addressing each activity in turn. He first executes it, bearing in mind the question of what then happens. What then happens? Then he, one, takes note of what he is spontaneously inclined to say about experiences that then occur, of the precise expressions he feels attracted to, and of the particular circumstances under which he is tempted to use it, to use it. This yields a psychological, accurate account of his temptation. Of his temptation. And two, he checks what warrant there is for saying what he thus says by considering what he can actually remember. Remember. This reveals the idea at hand is a fiction or imagination due to unwarranted leaps of thought.
Leaps of thought.
Thus, after copying a doodle put down for the purpose, he is spontaneously inclined to say that he felt a kind of influence of the original on his movements. When I look back on the experience, I have the feeling that what is essential about it is an experience of being influenced, of a connection, as opposed to any mere simultaneity of phenomena. But this impression is entirely unwarranted. It's as if I couldn't believe that I merely looked, made such a face, and drew a line. But do I not remember anything else? No. He notes that certain formulations trigger the leap of thought. And yet, I feel as if there must have been something else. In particular, when I say guidance, influence, and other such words to myself. Of such and yet, I'll repeat it, yet I feel as if there must have been something else, in particular when I say guidance, influence, and other such words to myself. For surely I tell myself I was being guided by an original, by the original, the starting point. I just need to pause quickly there. Only then does the idea of that ethereal, intangible influence arise.
Ethereal. Ethereal.
Ethereal, intangible influence arise. This is a leap of thought presupposing an instance of schema 1. I have actually copied the figure, was being guided by it. 1 or I1. If someone actually copies a figure, he has an experience of being influenced or guided. Which experience makes the difference between actual copying and merely coincidental reproduction, which entails 1. I have the experience of being influenced. An alternative edition is of being guided. It is a phantasm. He doesn't really exist. Wittgenstein feels inclined to leap to this conclusion, even though he reflectively rejects 1. It is not an experience that makes the difference between actually being guided by and merely coincidental reproduction of the original. But rather the fact that he drew the second line down exactly parallel to it, rather than arbitrarily, and would have explained by reference to the original line why he drew the second the way he did. He did. He did. As all the leaps of thought Wittgenstein examines, in this investigation, this leap is autonomous. Autonomous. These leaps have him posited an experience where there is none as a leap from one to I, or to radically misinterpret an experience he actually has, such as the misinterpretation reported in 169 and spelled out in 170 of the actual experiential difference accurately described in 169 C6. Wittgenstein elicits many of these leaps in experiments similar to the copying experiment just discussed, with himself in the twofold role of guinea pig and experimenter. Experimenter!
Pig.
Some of these we shall analyze later. Through these experiments, Wittgenstein exposes his own urge to systematically imagine or misinterpret experiences. In leaps of thought that presuppose assumptions he explicitly rejects. Pseudo problems. When this urge has him imagine experiences where there are none, a particularly acute conflict with reality arises and generates the impression of a problem. At the very least, in the form of unwarranted philosophical puzzlement. Puzzlement! Puzzlement! Thus, Wittgenstein initially feels puzzled by his copying experiment. Copying experiment. He is inclined to say that he had an experience of being influenced. But at the same time, I should not be willing to call any experience phenomenon that I can actually remember the experience of being influenced. Influenced. His inclination thus leaves him with a perplexing idea of an influence that is effective but ethereal, intangible.
Ethereal.
Ethereal,
Ethereal.
intangible.
Ethereal. Ethereal.
A philosopher who is not merely inclined to say, but actually assumes that a characteristic mental event is essential to the exercise of some activity and is simultaneously unable to grow aware of any suitable event in performing it. Will feel there is a tension between a philosophical assumption he makes and the fact he recognizes. Philosophers typically speak of a tension between different assumptions when under the impression that they jointly entail either a contradiction or an absurd conclusion. Conclusion. When we want to maintain all pertinent assumptions, this impression has us formulate a distinctive kind of philosophical problem. The problem of showing against first appearances to the contrary that different assumptions that we think have to be accepted are in fact consistent or fail to entail the sort of absurd conclusion that appear to follow from them. Indeed. To put it more succinctly, we thus raise a reconciliation problem. The problem of reconciling different assumptions in the face of an apparent tension between them. Reconciliation. Apparent tension between them. Wittgenstein develops a problem of this sort right before launching the investigation of reading. The problem is about understanding a number series. While, of course, no activity such understanding is akin to the activities discussed in that it is associated with characteristic forms of behavior that may, however, be displayed without actual understanding. Thus, someone may correctly continue the series by a fluke, may utter the pertinent formula without understanding of either the formula or the series, etc. Also here leaps of thought in line with schema 1 may occur. The temptation to make them is particularly strong in the case of sudden understanding, signaled by the exclamation, "Now I understand." For in such cases of understanding, in marked contrast to others, we typically are aware of some mental process. For instance, thinking of a pertinent formula, some mental arithmetic, etc., and so on. Also here, leaps of thought in line with schema 1 may occur. The temptation to make them is particularly strong in the case of sudden understanding, in marked contrast to others. We typically are aware of some mental process, thinking of a pertinent formula, some mental arithmetic, etc. I think I've read that before. And may all too easily conclude that it makes the difference between genuine and merely apparent understanding. Accordingly, leaps to this mentalist conclusion about sudden understanding may occur even once one has appreciated that the attribution of understanding of a number series amounts to more or less the same as the attribution of a capacity of know-how to continuous the series, which point Wittgenstein appreciates in PI 146 to 150. Elegant. Very elegant. He then raises his problem about sudden understanding as a result of 3 leaps of thought. they differ from those he deliberately examines in his subsequent experiments, in that he initially finds them compelling and goes along with them.
Goes
Even
along
though,
with them.
along with them, indeed.
Goes along with them. Clap, 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 clap.
Even though he explicitly equates understanding with a capacity, he immediately proceeds to put a mentalist
Mentalist.
interpretation on the question. What is it that makes its appearance here?
Appearance.
Appearance! He does not respond with a detailed or otherwise informative description of the capacity he explicitly assumes to make its appearance, but mindlessly interprets the question as one about an event. What happened here?
What happened here?
And immediately answer it by adducing some mental events we are typically aware of when suddenly understanding a series, thinking of a formula, etc. I think he's pointing to the Eureka moment. Eureka, Eureka, Eureka. What happened here? Thinking of a formula, etc. Yeah. In leaping from the first to the second question, Wittgenstein inadvertently presupposes that the understanding that makes its appearance here is a mental event.
Is a mental event.
This translates into an assumption instancing schema 1. I too, or 1 2. If and only if someone actually understands a mental event occurs that constitutes real understanding, it is inconceivable that the subject should not understand when it occurs. The next two leaps presuppose this very assumption, the observation that each of the events adduced may conceivably occur even when the subject does not understand. Understand leads Wittgenstein to conclude immediately that, 2, the mental process of understanding seems to be hidden behind those coarser and therefore more readily visible accompaniments. Accompaniments! Accompaniments!
Visible accompaniments. Visible accompaniments.
He seeks to get hold of this process and fails to succeed. From 153. This process is as ethereal, intangible as the experience of being influenced in copying. The conclusion that this process is hidden then is at odds with the observation that I said, now I understand because I understood. Inadvertently interpreted as amounting to, I said, now I understand because I was aware of the mental process that constitutes understanding. Understanding! Whence I am in a muddle. Wittgenstein apparently faces the problem of reconciling his conclusion too with the present observation. In marked contrast to 2 and 3, 2 and 3 do not even appear to be at odds when interpreted in line with our ordinary way of attributing understanding to others and to ourselves. We do not use the phrase, now I understand, to report a mental state, but listen now, to signal that we can continue the series. And we and other judge whether the signal was rightly employed by considering how we continue that series and how we explain and justify our continuation of it. Our continuation of it. Accordingly, I may say, I said, now I understand, to report, because I understood, and not because I wanted to impress you or say something to myself, to state that I employ the signal sincerely, by being confident that I can continue the series correctly and give an explanation to justify my choice of numbers rather than hoping for luck in guessing. When rightly employing the signal, we will frequently think, of a formula that enables us, who we have learned algebra and have used this kind of formula before, to continue the series correctly, but does not put a novice in algebra into that position. That position! Properly understood, 3 does not even appear to be inconsistent with 2, or with 2, Latin 2, for that matter. Okay, for that matter, or Latin 2 for that matter, will be the end of 161.
That matter.
Matter for that matter.
That matter. Page. This is 61, perhaps. Let me see, suppose it's 61. Yes, page 61.
It's 61. Thank you very much. Let's see here. I will start from the bottom here. I think just mentioning that one reason for misunderstanding could be the phrase, now I understand. Others might think that some sort of mental process has been going on or happened just then. Something in the person's brain had a certain state, and we mistake that for an inner process, or we take that directly, automatically to be an inner process. And all of a sudden, all this conundrum with inner processes are created. As suggested by Fischer Wittgenstein, the reason why, and I would say even you go back to school, teacher will ask, do you understand? I say, I understand. I'm not then referring to a mental process, but it's a thumbs up to continue. If you're building something together, I built a hut once. I know how to do it. It signals, let's start doing it together. Or I can continue and you can follow up. It doesn't imply an internal cut-off process. That would be the mental in the end, or the psyche, only psyche. Let's go to page, oh my, there's no page, the first page, that starts with 58 possibly. The Big Bang here is the last sentence. I experience the because. I experience it because, or the because. Here it starts. That's the Big Bang. That's really the original. That's the Qumran scroll of mental events. I experience the because. And because automatically, inadvertently slips in. And we go to the next page, will be 59. Pseudo problems. The second paragraph under pseudo problems. And now I think we're on the wrong page.
Pseudo problems is on
No,
page
we're
60.
not. We're on the, sorry, I'm wrong. Let's go back a page. 59. Yeah, you can go down a bit where you were, a little bit more to the different lines. A bit more, the schema 1 explanation. And here, there. only then does the idea of that ethereal, intangible influence arise. It comes that you start to think, you misinterpret language itself, and others do it as well, third person perspective. And you start saying, I have actually copied the figure and I was being guided by it. I saw it in front of me and therefore I copied it. And you have starting to think that you have an experience of being influenced. And you think in the process of copying, you have the first line in your head somewhere. And this is called later, if you go down a little bit there, please, Kalle. A little bit more. There. It is not an experience that makes the difference between actually being guided by and merely coincidental reproduction of the original, but rather the fact that he drew the second line down exactly parallel to it, rather than arbitrarily, and would have explained by reference to the original line why he drew the second the way he did. For me, this sentence really helped. It's from 177. I read it before, and now it really went down. If you do a copying, you do a second line, it doesn't really mean that you have the first line in your head. It might sound completely obvious, but it doesn't have to be at all. You're just good at drawing and copying, but not copying from your head. You just do it and you know how to do it. And then we go to pseudo problems. Next page. And the end of the paragraph, the first one there, we see his inclination thus leaves him with a perplexing idea of an influence that is effective but ethereal, intangible. Now we have this mysterious influence of the mental at start. It gets established because there was already a habit there. And I think the next conclusion here, once that is established, that we start saying, we need to protect ourselves from the idea it could be a fluke. The copying could be a fluke. So someone who doesn't copy correct will not have that ethereal, intangible thing in his head. This is very close to the ether in physics. It was also assumed, never existed, it seemed to be necessary. And then Michelson-Morley experiment came, and Einstein was the one who really killed it off. But already with Michelson-Morley, it was gone. There's no need for it, and it will confuse so much. If you go down further in the page, it's about 10 lines from the bottom of this page, if you may, Kalle. And I'll start reading after the parenthesis there. And may all too easily conclude that it makes the difference between genuine and merely apparent understanding. So now we need to create rules to protect us from merely apparent understanding. And this is similar to the kid or whatever it was who continued a number series for a while, but then didn't do it correctly. The unwily kid, I think it was. By now, the mental is already established. We go to the next page, 61. What is it that makes its appearance here? He does not respond with a detailed or otherwise informative description of the capacity explicitly assumes to make its appearance, but mindlessly interprets the question as one about an event. That something happened here. The mental event or some other present event happened. And now we are doomed. By now we're stuck. It's much better to think of the moment, that moment when you say, Eureka. You could say that, or better, I understand. Remember the two carpenters making a wall and they handing one slab to the other. And the other person can say, I understand how to make a wall. That is in his hands, in his gesture, in his upmake. But it would make no sense to assume anything mental going on inside his head. Do note, for everyone who's new here, that Wittgenstein doesn't abhor the mental. It's nothing to do with that. It's just the original cause we're talking about here. The pure first thought, that could be the Big Bang or the scroll in Qumran. Kalle, you've been waiting way too long. Please come in. Let your voice be heard, my dear colleague.
Let's go to page 59. 59. Here, I will start from here. I have actually copied the figure. Was being guided by it. If someone actually copies the figure, he has an experience of being influenced or guided, which experience makes a difference between actual copying and merely coincidental reproduction, which entails had an experience of being influenced. I found this interesting because when it comes to copying manuscripts, or let's say the original evangelist, you listen to Jesus, and then so here it would be perhaps the evangelist copying the verse of Jesus.
It's very good. It's very good. I like it.
The thing is, okay, so you need also, it's only that there is a mystical, let's say, the Holy Spirit, but you need also, so to say, the mental disposition of the evangelist.
Yeah.
He has bad motives or something like that, or something. So you need the whole picture.
Yeah.
So you need the experience. And but I don't know, this is, so to say, Fischer's own conclusions, and Fischer assumes that there is a difference between actual copying and merely coincidental reproduction. It's not clear what is Fischer's position, but Fischer seems to think that there is actually a difference between copying and reproduction.
Oh, that is a difficult thing. In this stage, in this level where we are at now, what he writes here is from the part of how does it develop the idea of the mental is the second step in proof in the proof needed for an ordinary person, the interlocutor, or anyone. And what we say is there needs to be a difference. So that's the second step. Otherwise, it could be we start thinking. You see the scheme here. It's almost like a novel. We need to be careful. It could be a coincidental reproduction. It could be that the evangelist who copied were copying without any real motives to do that, or intention, or thinking. But still he copied correctly. Something like that.
So you could say that, yes, the evangelist did copy the figure or the words. I was guided by it. But that would be a false presumption, so to say.
It wouldn't be false. False and right doesn't enter this state, really. It's more that he wants to show how it got building up the whole thing. But in a way, yeah, it's imaginary, yeah, in a way, but yeah.
Because you cannot, so to say, think, and there is would be, what you say, because it would suppose there is an original cause, like the Holy Spirit, or
inside of the head, yeah. Spirit would be okay, but it would be something that you don't know what it is.
Absolutely. So there is no difference between, so to say, the spirit, the environment, and his actual doing. There's no inner process.
No. There's no inner process like that you can't talk about.
Absolutely. Let me go to page 61, and here Fischer is actually criticizing Wittgenstein, and Wittgenstein inadvertently presupposes that the understanding that makes its appearance here is a mental event, and then he says that this is at odds. Let me see, at odds. So Fischer is criticizing Wittgenstein here. So let me see. My understanding is that you can actually say, you can say, now I understand, because understood, because the past is connected with the present.
Oh yeah.
And with the future. So there is always something that is hidden, always present in the past. So to say.
Yeah. There's always something hidden in the past. Yeah, definitely.
It's like say the Bohmian implicit knowledge.
Good comparison. I like that one. Yeah.
Or you could also take Derrida's the Derridian absence is as important as presence.
Oh yeah.
What is the past in this case?
I think so. You're right.
The past is here. I understood.
Now I understand more.
So I think that you can actually say, or you must say like that. Now I understand because I understood.
Yeah.
Because there is no absolute presence, never ever.
No, not at all.
But on the other hand, there is never ever original cause.
No.
You can point at that because there is the original cause. If there is one, there is that implicit knowledge. But implicit knowledge is really not the original cause.
Exactly. There you go. Stop there, Kalle. Implicit knowledge is not the original cause, or implicit intention. Inner. Yeah.
They are like players in the Wittgenstein. So here you actually have two players. Now understand? It's playing with understood, because you need the past also.
Indeed, the past is always present, so to speak. Well, thanks, Kalle. I didn't understand better now. It was brilliant.
Yes, so therefore we could actually, I am defending here Wittgenstein against Fischer. What is Fischer saying? He's saying that the process hidden is at odds, but it's actually not. We need to have something hidden. but not in Freud's sense. Freud says that, let's say, we have the original trauma hidden in us, but it's not that kind of hiddenness.
No,
Because
exactly.
Freud's,
Not that kind of hiddenness.
but because Freud's hiddenness is actually the original cause, while Wittgenstein's hiddenness is actually the implicit or a player.
Yes,
That is
yes.
the past,
The
which
past,
is playing with the present.
Yeah.
Um,
Something that Johnston and maybe Wittgenstein, I'm not sure it comes from Wittgenstein, but at least Francis Weiling called stage setting.
yes, indeed. Yes, the stage setting is hidden in one way, or we don't. We are not always aware of it because
We're not aware of it, maybe to a little extent, and it is not in the present. The stage is set in the past, so to speak, before we get there.
And so I think that so to say that Fischer's conclusion is here is not correct. That understanding is a mental event. I don't think he would say that, because yes, there are implicit things, but implicit thing doesn't mean a mental event. It's a subtlety, but it's still an important subtlety.
Yeah.
That is the subtlety is precisely in this sentence. No one has because understood is. It might seem it's a mental thing, but it's not, because they're simultaneous. That is also an important keyword. Because now understand is simultaneous with the phrase because understood. In quantum physics, there is no difference. It's not about mental events. It's because they are simultaneous. They seem to be mental events understood, but it's not. Because mental event, it would also suppose original cause in one way.
Yeah. This is my idea, my hint, maybe I don't know, my association is that this is closely connected to the origin of the origin. The author, his original thought, or pure thought, something like that.
Therefore, speaking of purity, you need the model or the mud more precisely.
Yeah, it needs to be there. Definitely. And the past is present in the future, or the past is present in the now. It's a bit like how Rupert Sheldrake wants to have it when he says forms are present in the now. In a way, it becomes more obvious now. And very much thanks to your help here, Kalle. It was good with the absence from Derrida. It was brilliant. Very helpful. When I'm struggling with the text.
And there is, yes, I will take it next time, perhaps. Or should I say, we discussed this last time about the rational, irrational. I think this is important.
The rational and the irrational, yeah.
Yes, let me see. So we discussed it. Pretty place here. There. So for Wittgenstein, irrational is very important. It seems so on this PDF page 4. Leaps of thought presupposing given assumptions are irrational only if the conclusions strike the thinker as compelling regardless of what warrant he has for them. Irrational. It might seem that he's speaking of something irrational almost, but where is the difference between irrational? And I thought about that, and I will show you something. This is a linguistic thing, but I think it might help you to understand. Let me see if this page is kind enough to open. And we are all aware that A irrational is a negative negation. It's like in English terms you call it privative, okay? And it's like you see alpha privatum, that means not rational, okay? That is the usual understanding of irrational.
Yes.
That's not in strength with that, but people doesn't know that there is also another a in beginning of words. Like let me see if I can find examples. Like in English, it would correspond to the English in. Let me see. In. Here. You see. No. Okay, let me see. No, it's not here. But sometimes the a can. Let me see. Strengthen the word. Let me see. I don't have good examples.
No, I think this studio is ending up here.
Yes, let's end there. And okay.
Sorry about that, but you can get back to it next time. We'll continue.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much for the help, Kalle. Excellent with the absence, getting into the presence. That helped with this most difficult text. Sometimes I actually get scared that when he writes Wittgenstein, he's referring to the interlocutor. Nobody knows, but it's a great help to enter into this very difficult text. Thank you everyone for listening in. Have a very pleasant morning, day, or afternoon. Bye bye for now.